For my interview, I decided to interview Mark Horan. I met with him at his office on a Friday morning where he and his dog Dexter greeted me. The interior of his office was similar to the rest of the building: cream-colored walls, dark leather furniture, and pictures hanging on the wall. It had a very warm and welcoming feel to it. Mark is a licensed clinical mental health counselor who works at Mount Washington Valley Psychological Services in Conway, New Hampshire. He has been working at the practice since he opened it with a colleague about 20 years ago. Mark didn't figure out what he wanted to be until his mid-30s. He worked in restaurants, retail, drugstores, and even as a storyteller for a while. At one point, he ran a day program for adults with disabilities, which was a lot on him. He said that his favorite part about that job was having 40 or so people working under him who would come to him for advice about things regarding their personal lives. He thought, well, maybe I should look into counseling people since his job at the time wasn't his ideal profession. He went back to school at 35 for a counseling program at the University of Southern Maine. He ended up bringing his 2 4-year-old daughters to class with him a handful of times and had to sit in the back with crayons to keep them busy. He did his internship at the Mental Health Center of North Conway, where he later worked as the clinical director for a few months. He didn't mind this job, but it wasn't one that he wanted to keep since it was very bureaucratic, and he always felt like he was in the middle of something. Afterwards, he went to open his own practice, but a year or so after of convincing from his colleague, they opened a group practice together, the one that he is currently working at. The agency's mission and served populations. There are currently 8 different therapists that work in Mark's practice. His business partner left recently, so they sold the building, but he still owns the business and rents out the office space. Each therapist is basically running their own private practice, but under one umbrella. They serve all different kinds of populations, like couples, children, families, adults, and the elderly. They have licensed family and marriage counselors, certified child play therapists, and therapists that work in trauma treatment, specifically EMDR, and then some that just do general therapy for whoever needs it. They don't provide substance abuse counseling because it's a specialty license. Plus, the building has a common waiting room, and they didn't feel it was right to have children or old folks in the same area as people who could be coming in high or intoxicated. The goal of the agency is to provide a place where people can get most of their needs met, or one-stop shopping. For example, someone that's seeing the marriage counselor could easily make arrangements to see one of the child therapists if their child was having some trouble. Services and provided funding. The agency provides outpatient counseling. Outpatient counseling is usually a scheduled meeting that lasts an hour about once or twice a week. Ever since COVID, some of it has taken the form of phone calls and Zoom video chats rather than face-to-face counseling. It's designed for really anyone that needs help and whatever issues they're going through. They can be problems in day-to-day living or specific issues that have suddenly come up. It's typically funded through insurance, specifically Medicaid and some private insurance companies. Some people don't have insurance and pay out of pocket, and for others, their insurance will only cover a part of the appointment and you'll have to pay a copay. Educational requirements. I asked Mark what he had to do for education to get to where he is today. Pretty much, it's a lot, and he said that to start, you need to get a bachelor's degree in pretty much anything. From there, you have to get into a master's program for counseling, which should take you about 2 years if you go full-time. But for Mark, since he had other responsibilities at that point in his life, like his children and a job, it took him a little bit longer. At the end of your program, you have to do a practicum where you'll be supervised, and then you'll do an internship, which is like the practicum, but a bit longer. You take the licensing test, and if you pass, you'll have your conditional license. Mark said that for him, to get his full license, he had to have 2,000 clinical work hours, but the numbers may have changed by now. You also need continuing education to maintain your license. Career likes and dislikes. I asked Mark what he likes most and what he likes least about his job. He said that his favorite part of the job is seeing someone who's been struggling for a long time start to really find themselves. He admitted that sometimes he'll even feel emotional seeing someone else become successful in the ways that they want for themselves. He doesn't see people who come to him as needing change. He sees them as needing relief and guidance out from under all that they've been dealing with. His least favorite part of the job is paperwork. He said he's never liked bureaucratics, and paperwork, along with insurance companies, are awful to deal with. He recently had to send over a bunch of records for one of his clients because their insurance company was going to do an audit, which is just time-consuming and a lot of side work for him. Things that interested me. One thing that interested me during this interview was learning that each therapist in this practice has flexibility over how much they charge their clients. If you wanted to see someone for free because you know they don't have the funds to pay you, then you can do that. Mark said that he has clients who he sees for $10 and others that he sees for $150. He also said that the business recently took on a 5-year-old boy whose insurance won't cover his appointments, so they'll see him for free. The next thing that interested me was that this practice doesn't serve those who are struggling with significant mental illnesses such as schizophrenia. The reason for this is because people with severe mental health issues tend to benefit more when they have a team of people working with them, like psychiatrists and caseworkers. This agency just doesn't have the ability to give them that specialized care that they need. Lastly, I was interested to learn that the practice does not prescribe medications. Although they may not prescribe them, Mark can evaluate and give diagnoses, which can help him determine if someone would benefit from medications. If they might, then he can connect them with someone who can help and prescribe. What surprised me? I was surprised to learn that Mark and all the other therapists in his practice have the ability to make their own schedules and decide how many people they'll see each week. Mark has his schedule set up so that he works Monday through Friday, where he gets to the office around 8 a.m. and leaves around 6:30 p.m. most days. On average, he sees about 35 to 40 people a week. But another therapist at his office works on Saturdays because he wants to see more clients. Skills needed to be successful. When asked what top 3 skills are most needed in this field, Mark had a hard time giving a clear answer. After a little contemplation, he started by saying, you first need to be able to build meaningful connections with people. If you can't form some sort of relationship, then you're limited to how much you can help someone. Second, he said that you have to be a genuine person. In Mark's words, he says, people will know when you're bullshitting, and you have to actually care about them and what they're going through in order to help. Lastly, you need to be a good problem solver. People come to you with problems that they can't solve themselves, usually because they're smack dab in the middle of them and they're entangled emotionally. It's hard for someone to think logically when they're filled with so much emotion. Mark doesn't have those emotional entanglements about your problems, so it's easier for him to work through them and find solutions. My opinion of this career. I think that I would like this career. I think I've always enjoyed sitting back and hearing what other people's experiences are and what they go through. I'd like to think that I naturally take on the role as a helper, which could make me useful in this field if this is what I decide to do. I think that for my practicum, I want to do it over the summer so that I can get the full experience of it. I think I want to do it at the Mental Health Center in North Conway because that's how Mark figured out what he wanted to do specifically in this field, and it's close to home for me. I'm still deciding on what I think will fit me best, but so far, I really enjoy the idea of becoming a licensed clinical mental health counselor. I've been interested in this career for a long time since I've known Mark, and I think that my interview with him helped me realize that although it may take a lot of work to get to this position, it's very doable if you have the passion for it. You really have to believe in the good in people. I admire how he doesn't always do things by the book. For example, he had a female client whose issue was she didn't have a driver's license. She couldn't get to work because she couldn't go anywhere, and she had to walk miles just to get groceries, which she was struggling to afford because of her job situation. It wasn't really his role, but for part of their sessions, he taught her how to drive, and she was able to get her license. He said that he knew some people wouldn't agree with it, that he didn't care because it's what was going to help her and it's what she needed.